of the regulations. So hopefully to make a little more sense of all that, we'll have our demonstration. And we're going to create a new MPDS permit for an existing discharge. We have regulatory measure 343534, and before is Ventura discharge, and our application was received on 8/29/2013. So I'm going to switch on over to CWIX and log into our test database, because of course this isn't real data, so we don't want to put it in production. And we'll go ahead and create, maintain regulatory measures. And we're going to launch the regulatory measure wizard and create a new base regulatory measure. It's an existing regulated discharge, so we answer yes. And it asks us for which regulatory measure it is, and we have 343534. And we'll go ahead and search for that. And we will verify that it's for Ventura, and we'll go ahead and click the select hyperlink. Review the information that pops up to make sure that we did indeed select the right existing regulatory measure, and click all above information is correct. Now we do enter some basic information about the new permit that we got the application for. I'm just going to pick a staff person, and as noted by the pound signs, either the staff person or the author is required at this point. And the existing numbers are fine, but we do actually need an NPDS permit, or NPDS number, so I'm just going to, for the sake of time, going to change that into an NPDS number. Because the system was going to stop me if I didn't have that number, which is good. So here we get to our simplified tasks screen. It looks very much like what you see on the task tab of the regulatory measure, but it's just in the regulatory measure wizard instead. So we have our initial ROWD NOI received task, and we'll say that we got that application, as we said in the setup information, on the 29th of August. And so once I put that date in, you see that these other tasks were pre-populated by the system, and with the status of planned, following the date structure that I described in the previous slide. And I did have a typo there, so that's good. I was alerted to that. And this is actually a good demonstration. Once I changed that date to 2013, we see that all these dates that were pre-populated also changed to the correct millennium. So we're doing better now. Also, when I click out of the that date field, the status pre-populates for the one that I actually filled in. And so there is an automatic tie between the date that you filled in, whether that's scheduled or actual, and the status. So hopefully we don't end up with conflicting information. Over here is the checkbox I was talking about earlier, the custom task schedule. If I go in and, again, because I know my own schedule, maybe I'm going to be on vacation, or some other tasks or some other permits need to be worked on, I know that some of these tasks are going to slip, or maybe I have some more time, I can make some changes, and then, so I'm going to say that I know that this will be done on the, in February, and if I click that and make some changes, if I make a change to this, now nothing changes. The system doesn't override what I've changed because I say, I know more than the system does, don't override. So, and that's a nice feature if you take the time to make your own schedule. And then we would go ahead and finish our entry as a regulatory measure. Again, as much as you know at this point, your application just came in. Probably you'll stick to what was populated in the existing regulatory measure. So when it completes, we have our draft MPDS permit, and I just wanted to go back to the task tab and show you that what we had entered is still there, and at this point the custom task schedule is still checked. As things progress, you'll want to come back and update this with the actual dates as they actually happen. So you'll notice that we pre-populated both initial deficiency notification and, in this case, that ROWD NOI complete has the same scheduled date. That's not going to be actually the case because it can't be complete and be asking for more information at the same time. This ROWD NOI complete task, as I mentioned, has a lot of logic. So, excuse me, if we put in an actual date, well, let's undo this and put in an actual date of you'll see that this moves out now 30 days. So we anticipate that 30 days after you send out a notification for additional information, the discharger will have fulfilled that and given us the information we need to deem it complete. However, if in your letter saying, please provide us with this additional information, and you get that back, you would fill out this supplemental information received. You'll put the date that you're expecting it to get back that you put in your letter. We can make that 11/15. Pop out of there. And then when we actually get that back, it does actually happen on that date. And then, again, the complete date gets moved out 30 days from when we get our information back. And so on down the line for these things that then are predicated by this completion date. So that's the idea of this screen, to help us get more tasks populated. Again, it can be overwritten if needed, but again, that's the idea, that we get more tasks populated so we can schedule out our workload. So we'll go back to our presentation and move on to WDR review. And for this task, we have an active WDR, and we have our review dates that are scheduled either 5, 10, or 15 years, or as needed due to changes at the facility. And those 5, 10, 15 years are based on threat to water quality and are in our APM as to when these orders should be reviewed. When you get to that date, the review date, and your workload allows you to, you conduct the review and document the review. And we do have a template in SWRCB to help you document that review. And I'll be showing you that in a few minutes. Once you've completed your review, you record your outcome in SWRCB, and generally the outcomes are amend, no action required, rescind, or revise and renew. You record your outcome of the review in SWRCB based on these actions And then, as you implement the outcome, record that information into SWRCB. So if your outcome is amend, once you figure out you need to amend it, you'll mark that the outcome of the review is amend. When you actually go to the board with an amendment, then you go back into SWRCB and mark that the order was amended. And that'll be our demonstration, so hopefully that'll be clear as we move on. So some more screenshots. Here is an active WDR. We have our application processing task, but what I really wanted to highlight is the WDR review task. It's scheduled for 6/2013, and it's planned at this point. The other thing that's circled here closer to the top is the Generate WDR Review form. And this, when you click that hyperlink, it brings up a Word document where part of the form is filled out with information from SWRCB. The other part is a series of questions and the recommendation that you then record in the form. It does not talk back to SWRCB, but you can then use it to put in the file and upload to the record to say that this review was done. So for this one, the demonstration is for the regulatory measure 132393. Our outcome is amend, and the recommendation was reviewed and agreed to on 9/2 of this year. And as I mentioned, when the WDR is amended, then you complete the amendment table on the General Info tab of the record that we're working on. So we'll go back to our, we'll go ahead and save it just in case we need to go back. Always a good reminder. Now we'll go back to our search screen and search for this other regulatory measure. 13233. And we want to make sure that we're in the right place. It's for Eureka City WWTP, and that matches what we have as our setup information. And it's active. Scrolling down, so on this screen it says expiration review date is 5/15/2013. And that matches, which is good, as it should. The WDR scheduled date, the WDR review scheduled date is 5/15/2013, and also has the status of planned. Here's the Generate WDR Review form that I was talking about. When you click on that link and say Open, it'll open a Word document, and the top part will describe a little bit about the form, kind of instructions for using the form, and that doesn't change. And then there's a section about the facility that you're on. And I'll wait a second for Word to open. Okay, so as I said, here's the form. It's in Word. I'm going to try to make it a little bigger. The region is pre-populated there. Then it has some information about the use of the form, the kind of summary of when reviews are supposed to take place. And then it references this process document that you'll find on the internet about how to then do the entry into SWRCB, which is hopefully what I'm showing you here as well. And we have some information that's pre-populated by the system about the discharge and the records. We have the WDID number, the discharger name and address, the facility name and address, the order number, the date that it was adopted, and then the scheduled review date. Then we have information on how it's currently categorized the program complexity, threat to water quality, the staff, and the author. It's not the same as the staff. And then if you're going to make proposing changes, you just type those changes in to here. Maybe they've done some upgrading, or they're getting some additional waste, and you would put your proposed changes here. And again, it does not write back to CWIX. This is now just information for you and your supervisors to know when conducting the review and reviewing the review. When it's all done, if it gets signed off on, you'd go in and make this change, that you'd say that complexity is A on the additional info tab of the regulatory measure. But at this point, any proposed changes are just in your Word form, not in CWIX. And it has information about inspections since the adoption date. And you see that there have been 3 with no violations. And then it has any active enforcement actions that have been issued. And we have this one, NOV. And actually, as you see here, is active enforcement actions. Perhaps some have already been made historical. So it's not showing you all enforcement actions, it's just showing you ones that are still active. Then we get to the information that's supposed to be helping you with your review. This form was based on a form that Region 5 uses. I'm not sure if it's the same one that everybody uses, but I think it does have a lot of the factors that people are to be considering when you're doing your review. So you can enter in a date when the file, the review began. Then you can document that you check these specific things. And again, questions to consider while making your review. And finally, your recommendation, and then recommendation reasoning. And then your projected date for action or new review date. So if it's no action required, then you'll just have a new review date, and you put that in here. If you think it's going to need to be amended, what date you think it'll be amended by, or if it needs to be rescinded, what date it would be rescinded on. Then you have places for your review to take place by your senior and supervisor. And so, thinking back to our task tab, for your recommendation, you use the recommendations here. This form for, I guess that'd be revised, would be amend. You would use your outcome here, your recommendation here, as your processing outcome in CWIX, which I'll turn to in a minute, and then the date of concurrence by the second person who's reviewing your form, if that's how you do it in your office, would go in the actual date of the review. So we'll go back. After you complete the form and it's been reviewed, then you'd save it and upload it to CWIX, and then go back and do your entry. So again, you have your WDR review task, your outcome, we call it status just for ease of layout of this task tab, but in our situation, we're going to say it needs to be amended. You select amend as the status and enter that date of concurrence by your supervisor. 09/22/2013. And so now I recorded my review. I would want to, again, save my form, upload it to the attachments tab, and then when I actually do my review and that goes to the board for adoption, I keep on not wanting to say, then I could go into the general info tab here and say that it's been, say that it's been amended, and you fill in this amendment table here. So that's how you record your WDR review. If your outcome is revise, renew, and you request a new ROWD from the discharger, when that information then goes in a new regulatory measure, that would be similar to the process that I demonstrated earlier, where you will, for a time, have two records, the active and the draft recording the tasks having to do with the new order issuance. So then we'll move on to some other notes. Deficiency notifications is the first item that I wanted to cover. There are a couple different tasks related to deficiency notifications. We have the initial deficiency notification, then we have supplemental deficiency notification. So the idea here is we want to know, like, we'd be able to track how many applications end up needing additional information after their first submittal. After that, you just use the supplemental deficiency notification task. You could use it once, you could use it 5 times, meaning in total you had to contact the discharger 6 times to get the information that you needed. Then we have the supplemental info received to say when the information came back to you. And there's just one of those. We don't have an initial info received. It's just once you've tracked that an initial request has been made for additional information, then you just use the supplemental info received task to record all the additional information that you receive. Let me go and make sure that's clear. So we have our initial application received. If that's somehow deficient, you'll write a letter saying, you know, we can't process your application or we can't issue your order unless we have this additional information. So that for that first request, we use initial deficiency notification. When the additional information comes in, you know, the response to that letter, you record that under supplemental ROWD NOI information received. Then, if that's still deficient, you use supplemental deficiency notification. And once that comes in, I'll try to fill in some dates here so we can kind of get the idea. So we have an initial deficiency notification. We get back, and maybe it only takes a couple days, which would be great. And if you were really doing this, once you send that, when you put in your letter that you wanted the information at a certain date, you could put that in the scheduled date, and then when it actually comes in, it'd be the actual date. But I'm just trying to demonstrate that you use the supplementals as many times as you need. So you're going to ask for, again, if they were still deficient, you ask for additional information, you send that letter out, and then now each task in this template only shows up once. And so now we have to go back when we get our information back, or when we say that we want it back, we have to go down to this Add Task area and then select Supplemental ROWD Info Received, add this task, and it goes to the top so we know where we are, and we can say that we receive this. And then it gets ordered back into our list here according to actual date. So again, the idea is if you have to go back and forth with them, you can record all those and demonstrate, one, you're demonstrating that why it might have taken a long time to get this action out. The other is that you can have it on your radar that this still needs to be completed and still needs to be dealt with, especially when you put in your scheduled dates for when you're expecting that information back. You can kind of keep your eye on it, because we do only have a certain amount of time to deem it complete or to issue the order once the application is complete. I did actually just going to demonstrate this, that when you have tasks that you want to record in your record that aren't in that template, you have this Add Task button at the bottom of the screen, and when you select your task and click the Add Task button, it'll go to the top and highlight in green so you know that that's the one that you've just added. Some other examples of important items are tasks that put ACLs on billing hold, and so those are the bankruptcy tasks that refer to AG for collection. Those will then allow DAS to know that these items should be put on hold. And then also pre-treatment related tasks are also important to record here, so that you're tracking that information and you're conveying it to the NPDS program manager. And so again, I'll show you that list. It has this long list is all the tasks available. It has the ones that you can add more of if you need to. So petition, bankruptcy determination, and referral to AGs have to do with ACLs, putting those on hold. We have a bunch of pre-treatment related ones. And then we have a couple others, complaint investigation, tentative order sent to discharger. That has to do with, issuing the order, but it doesn't, not every region is into tracking it, so we didn't make it part of the template. And again, you select the one that you want to add, you click the Add Task button, and it'll pop up there for you to add. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we are developing a new tool for the NPDS unit to use in being able to track their reissuance schedule, kind of tracking their backlog and when you intend to get a new NPDS permit reissued. It also tracks inspections and pre-treatment work by staff and contractors. The idea is it'll replace a tool that currently our contractor maintains. So we'd be being able to do that in-house, but it'll take the information from the Tasks tab and put it in this report that we have. So that'll be a helpful tool. As it says here, it's currently being tested and should be out in the next month or so. So now I wanted to move on to reports that you can use to see this information that you enter into CWIX. One I like is the task report. So it's going to run an example report. If you wanted to know the applications received since 2011, but the order hasn't been issued yet, we'll go ahead and do that. We'll use the filter for reg measure status and set that equal to draft, the task type equal to initial application received, and the actual start date by 1/1/2011. So we'll move on over to run reports. and it's under miscellaneous. Oops. Task report. We have a lot of things to search by. One of the somewhat unique ones is manager. So as a manager, you can select your staff. And so for our case, we want to select application or regulatory measure status equals to draft. And hopefully you're familiar with any of the boxes that you can see multiple selections. You can hold the control button while clicking to select multiple values. And our task type is over here, and we're looking for initial ROWD NOI received, and actual start date. Task actual date is 01/01/2011, and then we can run our report. And so here we have our report. We can, like our other reports, it has the information we searched by at the top. You can view a printer-friendly version, export the report to Excel, or say, oh, that wasn't quite really what I wanted. You can refine search, or that wasn't what I wanted at all, and do a new search. But this gives you a lot of information. It starts with the regulatory measure ID. That's a hyperlink, and will take you to the general info tab of the regulatory measure. Moving over to the discharger hyperlink, this will open up the parties at a glance report. The facility hyperlink will open up the facility at a glance report. And then the task type will open up the task tab of that specific regulatory measure. And then it, again, just gives you the information about the regulatory measure and the task that you, in this case, we searched by. The other places you can see this information are the View My Records page. So if you wanted to see what tasks you had upcoming that were assigned to you, you can use that page. And then the files also have task information. So just to kind of summarize what we went over today, we hope you use tasks for managing workload, and I wanted to also note they are used in the performance measure report. If you've gotten a new application, they go into a new draft regulatory measure. And so for existing discharges, you'll have the active regulatory measure and the draft regulatory measure. For the WDR review task, at the review stage, it goes in, that task goes into the regulatory measure that you're reviewing. If you're interested in other webinars we've given, you can go to the recorded or the webinars page. Here you see a screenshot of the State Board's WaterNet page. On the left-hand navigation menu, there's a webinars link towards the bottom of that navigation option, of those navigation options, and then navigate to the SWRCB section. You can find additional information on this particular topic of tasks. We have business processes for entering applications, and that's essentially the first process I went through where you're creating a new regulatory measure. We have a process for the WDR review entry, which I also demonstrated, and the more general task entry process of just kind of the different tasks we have and when they're applicable. Here's my contact information. You can